The first piece of the journey to becoming who you choose to be is unbecoming all the stuff that you became because of what happened to you.
Hi, and welcome to Don't Shrink to Fit podcast. This podcast is all about you and all the courageous, driven women like you. We are here to inspire, to empower, to share, and to embrace one another. We will be talking with women from different backgrounds and careers about love, family, friendship, their wins and falls, and what it took for them to live the life they love. I am your host, Claudia Noriega Bernstein, and I am so happy you're here today. Hey guys, how are you today? I'm super excited because I have Khristin Wierman. I hope I didn't butcher your name. She's the winner of the 2024 IPP White Bronze Medal in Popular Fiction. Khristin spent 20 years racing through the marketing ranks of Fortune 500 companies, building a career that was lucrative, ego-boosting, and a little bit soul-crushing. So she decided to quit and had no idea what to do with her life.
Thank you so much, Claudia, for having me. I'm so happy to be here. And I'm smiling and laughing because every time I hear that, I remember writing that part of my biography and thinking, this sounds so odd, but this is just the truth. So I had my dream job. I had worked so hard, and the shocking thing was I wasn't happy, and that stayed in place for a long time. And then I really began to realize the cost that my career was taking on me, on my husband, on my family. Circumstances began to change, and I ended up quitting. And for the first time in my life, I had the ability to do whatever I chose to do. I had family obligations, I had people depending on me. So every decision I made was never about what lights me up, what inspires me. I certainly did not go to school, with that sort of mindset. I've got a family to support, I've got people in hospitals, I have to earn money because there are people depending on me. That is how I made every decision in my teenage years, in my 20s. And so I got into my 30s, and suddenly I'm in this wonderful marriage, and I've separated from a lot of those family members, and I had this opportunity to do anything. And I found myself up against a blank wall. And that was so upsetting because finally the opportunity was there, and I didn't know what lit me up, which really sent me on a journey backwards into, well, why is that the case? And when I think about your book, I Don't Shrink to Fit and Don't Shrink to Fit, I feel like a lot of my journey was realizing how I'd been put in these boxes without even knowing it. And how do I get out of that? And really, the writing came out of desperation because every book I was reading said, just do something creative, do something different, do something you don't let yourself normally do. And I thought the writing would be some kind of way to open my mind and I would find the next career. And yet, as I began to write the scenes for for the first book, I realized the writing was the point all along.
Wow. And what amazing discovery that was, because I'm sure that your healing started that moment.
It did. And the thing for me that I have found is that in writing these stories, the story leads me, I have an idea of something that I've learned in my life that I'd like to write about. But then as I'm working through the story, I begin to find all these nuances that I didn't even know before. And so the story stays true to my original vision, but then also takes me in places I didn't expect and has been incredibly healing in terms of unwinding from the things that happened. And that's what I have found my books are about now. I've got two that are out in the world and one that will be out next fall, but I write about women unwinding from the knots of their past, from being put in these boxes as children and often under the cover of a very nice life. Everything on the surface looks beautiful. Everyone is well dressed. No one's having to make decisions about, do I fix my car? Do I pay my electric bill? And yet you can suffer so greatly even in an environment like that. And that is what I have found that I'm here to talk about.
And I love that you're talking about that. We were talking a little bit before the show, and that has been my focus this year. Kind of giving myself permission, and with that being a billboard of possibility for my own kids, to be unapologetically myself. Now what my mom wanted me to be, or anybody, not even my husband wanted me to be, is who I want to be. When do I feel comfortable in my own skin? What are my dreams, not their dreams, not their vision, not what they think that I should be. I was talking the other day with somebody because one of my first clients came to me one day many years ago. I've been coaching for almost 17 years. And one of my first clients came one day to me and it was talking about how stuck and unsatisfied she felt. And at that time, I didn't know what I know now. Okay. So I was navigating with the knowledge that I had at that moment. And she said to me, I don't feel good about myself. I feel that I'm meant for more. I want more and this and that. And I was like, well, in a perfect world, what would you be doing right now? And she said, I would be a choreographer. And I'm like, wow, that's incredible. I didn't even know you dance. And she goes, but dance at home. I said, but you're an accountant. And she said, yeah, it's because my dad is an accountant and my mom is an accountant. So they told me I was good with numbers. And I was so much in shock to realize and look at myself in her. She was my mirror. Like, how many times I have said yes to the world and no to me? How many times I had assume or receive or adopt or inherit roles that are not mine? And we do it without asking, without getting curious, without considering if this is maybe something that I would like to do or not. And if somebody else is disappointed, so be it. So we live our life thinking that we have to be what we should be because that's what the world expects us to be. And then we are, I don't know, 50, 60, even 70, and we never lived a life with purpose because we adapted to the circumstances, to the environment. And so when I read about your book and your bio, I'm like, I have to have Khristin in my show because number one, I think it's so important what you write about, even if it's a fictional story. I love your kind of book with a little humor and stories. That's my escape because I'm super busy. But I love that you write about that because there is so many women that are awakening right now. Like I said, 17 years ago, I got curious about it, but I didn't
Right.
know half of it. Now
Right.
I do.
Right, because you have to relearn everything in some ways. And what you were just describing a moment ago, that realization, when you really face that truth of what the last 20 years, 30 years, whatever they were, I mean, that is kind of heart shattering. And that takes a minute to actually face that, not crumble under it and say, no, I'm going to stand in this and I'm going to figure out how to walk myself out of it because I'm not done yet. I think so many of us face that. And I think we find that we've been living our life on this autopilot. There's a difference between were you encouraged to think for yourself, to ask questions, to make choices for yourself. Some people aren't encouraged. And then I think some of us are punished very strongly for that. And if that is your experience as a very young child, your hands are tied behind your back before you even know what's happened. That is very hard for people who did grow up in a supportive environment that was nurturing. They sort of look at you and say, what's wrong with you? And you think, well, I don't really know, but something is because my hands are tied behind my back and I don't know why.
Because you have this life and you're still not happy. So it's like, I'm not a good person. I mean, look at there's other people that don't have half of the things I have and they're happy. And here I am all upset because I feel that there is something else and I don't know what it is. And yet I have the car parked outside and the big house and the nice clothes and the purses and whatever. And you feel empty.
And you feel like there's something wrong with you. And I think that was one of my most profound moments because I struggled with that all my life. What's wrong with me? I have this, I'm stable, I have these things, and I still felt upset and empty. And I remember the moment when I realized all my life I thought something was wrong. I thought something was wrong with me because that's what I was always told. What was wrong was people I was with and what they were doing to me. And I think that's where it gets really hard. We know something's wrong. We just think it's us that's wrong instead of the fact that we're growing up stifled, stuffed into a box. If you really allow yourself to face the truth, which I think is the only way through, that's a big moment. And then you have to sort of get back up and walk through it.
Right. Realizing that even though it looks good in paper, it doesn't mean
Yes.
that it's good for you.
Exactly. And you mentioned that I write fiction and that is such an escape. And that's what's so important to me. My is off to people who write memoir. I think that is so brave. I think that is amazing. And so many of those have helped me, but mine was just too much. So being able to weave in my experiences into my fictional stories, which I think if you've been betrayed, if you've been abused, you can write that on the surface however you'd like, but the
Right.
feelings underneath it.
Instead of you being Khristin, you call your character Natalie.
Right. But people relate to that. And I think that's where they feel the authenticity because you know what those moments are like. But the thing with fiction is you get to have some control over how much you share. You get to write happier endings. You get to write people behaving better than they may have in real life. And I found that part of the process incredibly, incredibly rewarding and helpful and sort of coming back into my wholeness for myself.
I love that. And then you said in your books, your characters are women in midlife who are rewriting their story. Why do you think this stage of life is such a powerful moment for transformation and unbecoming?
I'm still grappling with that, but I agree with you. I think that is happening to so many of us. I can't tell you how many conversations I am having with other women, and everyone's sort of there saying that word that you said, awakening, waking up, and not choosing to just stay with the status quo, waking up and saying, I'm going to do something different.
Not just feel the uncomfortable emotion, but also what's the next step? What am I going to do? Even if it's messy, even if you're not ready, even if it's scary, but you still make that step to learn more about you and what you want. I mean, I truly believe that we didn't come to this world to suffer. We came to this world to be happy. So if you are not happy right now, what are you doing about it? Don't just tell me you're unhappy. I don't care about the circumstances, not in the sense that I'm indifferent about your circumstances, but don't care about so much about the circumstances. See what you can rescue out of those circumstances and make something, create something, look for something that is going to make you happy.
I completely agree. And I think there's something to your question before about why this happens now. I can say this undoubtedly that there was so much truth I had to face about the way that I grew up with my mother that I
Mhm.
did in my books. I could have never faced that until I was in the loving marriage that I'm in now, because there were some memories that came up and things that there's no way I could have faced that. I couldn't have faced those things if I was working 70-hour weeks like I was doing in my 20s to support that mother. So I do feel like part of the timing aspect is you get to this point in your life, whether it's 30s, 40s, and 50s, and I'm with you. My part of this, I think, is that is helping other people get there sooner than us. That's what we want for the next generation, for our kids and the younger people we love. Is goodness sakes, I'd love for you to get there at 25,
Exactly.
at 30, but you get to that point and you have some stability, almost like a foundation to be able to stand on, to then turn around and face that truth, and the ability to go do something with it, to write a book. No, I didn't have the luxury of writing a book when I was working 70 hours a week or doing those things, or if you've, got three little children. I mean, there's times in our lives when we just maybe can't fit another ball in to juggle. And
Right.
I do think that's part of the timing is when you get to this point, a lot of times you do have the ability to use your time differently, to make some different choices. But I'm with you, there has to be a reason for all of this.
And I think also not feeling that everything that is happening to you, is happening for you. I mean, you said that the illness, the mental illness of your parents shape your voice. So tell me a little more about that. How did you saw those experiences and rescue the positive from it?
Well, that took a long time. Before I could get on the other side of it, I sort of had to journey back through. But my mother had her first fully psychotic breakdown when I was 14 years old. She began to have more of those. My father left. And so by the time I was 19, my younger brother and sister and I were dealing with her on a full-time basis. And I had to hospitalize her 11 times throughout my 20s. And this is full-on psychotic, destroying things, violent, out of call the police, the whole thing. I think that for so long, I thought that those episodes were what I was unwinding from. Just I knew that wasn't okay. But what I went to therapy and did many things, but it really wasn't until not that long ago that I began to realize the poison was there before she started having the psychotic breakdowns. As I began to look at how I was raised and the things I was told about myself and the things, she was verbally abusive, she was emotionally abusive, she was neglectful, she was absolutely a narcissist in sort of the core sense, although that was never diagnosed, of she could not see anything except her own pain. So every experience was about her. Everything that was happening was always worse for her. Everybody else was supposed to be taking care of her. Nobody was doing a good enough job taking care of her. And so really back to your original question, and I'm answering this in a long way, facing the truth of all of that and being able and beginning to realize that this had gone way back before the stuff bubbled up to the surface, and then being able to say, okay, if everything I was told about myself was wrong, if everything I was told about the world was shaped through that twisted mind, for lack of a which I think is unfortunately an accurate description, I think that's what gave me the ability to say, okay, then what do I think? What do I see? And how do I see the world based on the experiences that I have had and not everything I was told, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense to me because you brought me to a time that and you're preaching to the choir to an extent. I don't know if that's the right way of saying it, but I grew up with your mother. And it wasn't until she was physically violent to one of my kids that I saw myself in that child. That I actually found my kid in a closet the same way I used to hide in the closet. And seeing her little hand all swelling because she had smacked her made me understand, fully understand how important my next step was going to be. That I'm going to stay in this conditioning and I'm going to pass down what I have received as the only way,
Right,
or it's going to stop with me right
right.
now. And I'm going to change absolutely everything.
Yep.
And I'm going to start with a blank notebook because I don't have notes have anything to rely on. I don't have any guidance. I'm in a foreign country by myself with no family. And the only person that I resourced to help me in a moment that I needed help just hurt my kid.
And that wasn't okay. That for you was the line. I think that happens to many of us. I remember my stepson asking me about my parents, and I remember realizing in that moment he'd never be near either one of them, and they were both still living at the time. They're not now. But I feel like whether it's our children or another young person or a younger sibling, because for me, that was where things started tipping with my mother as I saw what was happening to my younger siblings. And it's amazing the pain that we allow and abuse we allow ourselves to bear. But
Mm.
then when we see it happening to someone else, even a pet,
That's
that's where your line is. And it's amazing to me that we don't draw that line for ourselves.
so
Um,
crazy. It's so freaking
yeah,
crazy. I talk about this with my clients. It's like, listen, one of my kids broke up with her boyfriend after he disrespected me. And then I found out how many times he had disrespected her. She
oh,
allowed it. Living in a home where there was no screams, there was no violence, there was nothing, because remember, it stopped with me, right?
right, right.
She allowed that disrespect to herself. But the minute that this guy came and was rude to me,
That,
the ball turned on and she's like, enough, we're done. You disrespected my mother. And I had this conversation with her. Why him disrespecting you wasn't important enough, wasn't valuable enough, wasn't, I don't know, whatever word enough for you to make that decision at that moment. Like, I deserve better. What it has to be me. I mean, I totally get it. When my kids were little and I got a divorce, they were my fuel and I did a lot of things for them. They were my kids. And at that moment, I wasn't as enlightened as I am now, but that was my purpose. I'm doing all these things for my kids. Great.
right.
Now, I don't want you to do these things for me. I want you to do it
Right.
for yourself, because that's what I am trying to teach you. And it's so crazy what you just said, because it's so true. And I see it in my clients all the time. They draw the line when something happened to somebody they care for. But when it
Mhm.
comes to themselves, they stay in the same situation. They stay in the same abusive marriage, in the same dysfunctional and toxic relationships, until that relationship, that person touches in a way, in quotes, somebody that they care for. It's crazy.
And I think that that's probably part of everything you're saying. And so much of this in my new book that I'm writing, there's a lot of themes of those in there too. And I think that's probably an answer to your earlier question. One of the reasons why so many women are sort of feeling this purpose, whether it's in music or writing or podcast or speaking, but to say, let's talk about what I experienced, because that's the only way some of the younger generations will at least get to benefit earlier than we did. But I think it's because we love so deeply. Where one of the things I recently discovered about myself is I have this profound ability to let people off the hook, to think, well, I don't know, maybe they're having a bad day, or I can see that work was stressful.
We become pushovers. That was the first thing that I have to unbecome. And not everybody received it right, because we make them get used to whatever word you want to use. I always put it in my head. They get used to us bending for them. So then the
Yes.
moment that you say, I'm going to set my boundaries, now we don't like you. You have changed. But that comes with a criticism. It's not, you have changed, you have become. It's like more like a complaint. you have changed. I don't like you like that anymore. You used to be so nice. I'm like, wait a minute. I used to be in the floor so you can walk all over me. That's what you mean. And I am
Exactly.
not anymore. So that is not something that you like about me. Well, maybe I'm not for you.
Exactly. I have experienced that with so many friends, women friends.
Mhm.
And for me, that is now a flag of just, okay, if that's who you need me to be, the person that, no, I'm not doing that anymore. And I don't want, I wish you well, but we're not going to be friends anymore. I don't want to spend time with you. That's another big thing for me. I'm just not spending time with people that make me feel bad. Either,
Value in our time.
yeah, I won't do it. And that took me a very long time to get to that place. But and sometimes I don't even understand why. And again, wish everybody well. And I'd love for some of those relationships to come back in a more positive, healthy way. But at the same time, my tolerance for that is gone. And I think that's part of being at this phase in life is just you're not wasting your time with it anymore.
I think it's part of the healing. And I noticed that with me, the more I like myself, the less they like me. And I mean, I'm
Exactly.
sorry, but that's how it works, right? In that toxicity, you attract those people. I mean, I'm just going to put my mother as an example, but I had a lot of my mothers as friends. They have the same
Yep.
characteristics and the same behavior and the same narcissistic traits. And I will accept them because that's what was familiar for me. I grew
Hmm.
up with that, so I know how it is and I can handle it. Even
Hmm.
though I was making myself smaller in the process, I was able to handle and I was comfortable being around that kind of people. When I
Right.
start healing, when I start acknowledging, when I start remembering, because also our mind play tricks with us, right? You only remember the good and the pretty. And when you start digging in, I was telling you before, when I wrote the preface for my new book, Brighter Days, I wrote a lot of things that I was afraid to write before because who's going to be upset if I write that? And then I have to take a hard look in the mirror and say, wait a minute, you're not saying a lie, you're saying the truth. And if they cannot deal with the truth and the consequences of their behavior, that is not my problem anymore because they
Exactly.
are the ones that behave that way. So me saying that my mother smacked my kid makes her uncomfortable, so be it. Because
Right.
the truth, you hit my kid. And that was a pivotal moment in my life when I realized that I was not going to raise my kids, not that I was beating them up, but allowing somebody else to harm them physically, the same way that you harmed me physically when I was a kid.
Right.
So in the journey of healing, I started shedding people. I started getting rid of people without even wanting to do that because I didn't attract that crowd anymore. I didn't want that crowd anymore. I was not happy with that crowd to begin with. So that was a decision that I made for myself and I run with it. And it's been a few years. And yes, I miss some of these friends that were like sisters to me, but they refuse to embrace my healed version.
Right.
Wanted me to stay small so then they could feel comfortable. I am in a place in my life right now that I refuse to dim my lights so
Mhm.
somebody else will feel more comfortable. And now
Right.
that I'm translating my book in Spanish, I went through the preface and I was sobbing my own story
Hmm.
and remembering, bringing me back to those moments. And I'm crying reading it. Like I try to read it like this is a third person, just reading it, sure that all the information and the data is there. But I can not feel sad for that version of myself that endures so much. And at the same time, and I'm sure you go through this too, I'm so fucking proud of her.
Absolutely. And you articulate all of that you articulated, which you articulated so beautifully. I am with you. And those are some of the most profound moments. And I look back at the child I was and I think, I don't know how she didn't just curl up in the closet and die. I mean, I don't know how I got through what I got through. Back to what you were talking about with the friends, I think that's why some of us are going through this journey so slowly and deliberately because it is so scary to stand up and say, not this, when
Mm-hmm.
you don't know what is supposed to be there. All you know, I have had so many moments of all I know is not this. That all I know is not what I came from. Not back to your point of I don't have any notes. I don't have a blueprint. I have no idea. And when you have to say not this without knowing what's going to fill that void. You sort of feel like you're just like standing out there and you could be dead wrong. But it's really the only way I've found to get through this. And I think it's moments like that that bring you to what you were just describing, where you actually really can look at what happened to the child that you were and think, how on earth did she, and not just child, I mean the teenager, the 20 something, the 30 something.
Exactly. There is a part of my writing. I do speaking events as well, and I empower women every time I can because that's my high. But what I was saying is that I was remembering all these versions of myself, and I was thinking about, yeah, the little girl that used to be scared just to listen to the heels of my mom closer to me because
Yeah,
I knew that she was coming and I didn't know what version of her was going to be.
exactly. And
It
yet you
was
loved her.
her now from a distance because
Yeah,
I had to make the decision to choose me. And then I remember the teenager and all the ways that I tried to feel that I belong and all the ways that I tried to feel that instant gratification and love in all the wrong ways and trying to feel enough and worthy of that love. And then somehow life will show me that I wasn't worthy and then try again and not give up on yourself and then give up on yourself for a period of time and then remember that you don't want to give up on yourself, so you go back to trying. And it is like you said it before, it's 2 steps forwards and maybe 10 steps backwards, but as long as you make that next step forward, you are in the right track because healing is not linear and you're going to go through moments in your life when you feel like shit, when you feel ashamed, when you feel guilty, when you feel scared. And the trick is just to keep on going. And it is not an easy journey.
absolutely. And you really have to become your own guiding light. You have to decide what you think about the world, what kind of person you're going to be, how you're going to respond. And so often, and that to me was such a scary, because fundamentally, with all the things we're talking about, you're taught not to trust yourself. You're taught that your choices are bad, your opinions are wrong. You're taught to doubt yourself, and that all of that self-doubt, permeates out, and then you attract all these people that are just like the ones you just got away from, and that's a whole thing. And in the midst of all of that, with all this negative feedback sometimes coming from the surface, finding that you at least like who you are and letting all that noise fall apart and being able to see that you are kind and you are loving. And yes, we all make mistakes, but not the same ones. My lines are very different than where my mother's were. And there have been times that it's just like, I don't know, like we said, not that. But it's such a wild journey. And being able to talk about it with someone who's gone through something similar is so lovely, because I do think this is a lot of the stuff that we don't talk about. And that's why, even though my books, there's the escape beachy read kind of aspect of them, which I love, but underneath, these are the real conflicts that are in the books, are the conflicts with our past and with who we were told we were. And I'm just glad that there's more dialogue about that, because I think the lack of dialogue and the lack of sunlight on that was part of what kept so many of us in the dark for so long. And we all sort of had to crawl our way out of it alone. And now we're finally finding each other. That's how I feel anyway.
And I think that right now, as you said before, women at middle age are getting more curious. And I think in 5 years from now, in 10 years from now, we're going to get to that 20-year bench. At 20, they're going to see it. It's starting now in the middle age because women, like, well, I don't know how old I'm 58. I'm going to be 59.
54.
When we're in our 50s, we start asking questions to ourselves. Is this the life I want? And so many women get divorced at 50. And before was unheard. You turn 50, you're in a marriage, you throw the towel and I give up and this is whatever. I mean, whatever, right?
Hey.
Women at 50 now don't think that way. They don't think they're at the end of their life. They're like,
No.
I'm 50, I know what I like.
Exactly.
I always talk about my ex in the sense of I grew up emulating. I would emulate anyone. So if I had a boyfriend that liked scrambled eggs, me too. I was the Me Too girl in the sense
Because
that
we weren't allowed to disagree. We were never
right.
allowed to
Number
disagree.
one, I wasn't allowed to disagree. Number two, I totally messed up the belonging and the fitting in. So I thought that if I fit in, I'm belonging. Wrong. And number three, I wanted to feel loved. I wanted to feel that unconditional love, and I refused to give up on the idea that wasn't available for me. So I was looking for it, even in the minimal things, as we both like scrambled eggs. So when I started my journey of healing, literally, Khristin, cook different kind of eggs and try them all to see which one I like. I had to go through that in many ways, in lipsticks. And I have my closet, I had a whole variety of outfits. Like 10 people live here. I didn't know what I like. And then if my husband liked me to dress certain way, why not? I'm going to be the girl that he wants me to be. So he's happy and he'll make me happy. No,
Right.
he doesn't have to make me happy. That's my job. It's my
Exactly.
responsibility. The same way that is now my responsibility to make him happy. You see my husband's face one day that we were going, I mean, we're 20 years together, so it wasn't linear. And at one point he turned around and he said to me, I'm not happy. And I said, well, you better do something about it because it's my job to make you happy. And he looked
No.
at me like, you're not the same. And I'm like, you want to be in that group? Because I can tell you where the group is right now.
Exactly.
So either you
Exactly.
embrace this better version of me, this happier version of me, this more together, complete, empowered version of me, or maybe I'm not just the right person for you, and let's have that conversation.
Good for you. And I think sometimes people will surprise you. They will. I mean, you don't lose that. I mean, there's people that will adjust, but I think that's amazing. It's just it's almost like you have to figure out your truth on the inside and hold to that. And you have to know that you are willing to stand behind your choices. And then
Mm.
the first thing that's going to happen is the whole world is going to tell you all those choices to make yourself well are wrong. Shitstorm happens. And then if you can hold your way through that, we begin to find ourselves with people that, because the bottom line is good people don't want you to fix them. And good is a terrible word to use, but well people, healthy people,
Well, balance.
yeah, people who are able to be in healthy, balanced relationships, we'll say it that way, aren't looking for you to fix them. They aren't looking for you to lay down as a doormat. And that was one of the biggest aha as I have come into some really beautiful friendships. And my husband was probably the first one of those. It was just being with someone who didn't want me to shrink and who didn't never ask me to get in a box. And in fact, who didn't saw me doing that in all these like subtle ways and was like, what is this? That's the thing. And I think that's the big aha moment when you start to be around some other people and you start getting that positive feedback on the well person you are and on the changes you're making. That's when you really see what you crawled out of and how awful that might have been. And that can be kind of earth shattering too.
Yeah. And one of the biggest things for me was accepting compliments. Wash them off. I love your dress. I got it in Ross. Oh, your hair looks great. Oh, I haven't washed it in a couple of days. Like it was always a negative after the compliment. I was never able to receive it and say, thank you. It's pretty, isn't it? No, because no, I wasn't wired that way. And I made the effort and be
Mm-hmm.
conscious about it. And when somebody would say something to me in my process of healing, I would pause and receive
Right.
it and go, huh, thank you. And feel weird. But then it was like, yeah, you deserve that. It's
But
okay.
that's so profound what you said. I feel like so much is you find one of those autopilot habits that you
Mm-hmm.
didn't even know you were doing. And the first way out is exactly that, the pause, because your first reaction, and I think a lot of, because I've struggled with the compliment things too, but I look back and I can see I was supposed to be pretty, but not too pretty. I was supposed to be pretty because I was her daughter, and as long as this light shined on her, well, of course she's pretty because look at her beautiful mother, but I was not supposed to be prettier than her. I was
Yeah.
supposed to be talented, but not too talented. And then you're in this awful dance of, back to your point of like, which mother am I going to get? Well, which daughter am I supposed to be today? Am I supposed to be the very accomplished, pretty daughter that's going to shine the light on you?
Choice, right? I remember one time somebody made a compliment about my legs. They says, you have very pretty legs. And my husband was right there. And my mom interrupted and said she got them from me.
Right. They can't, everything has to be theirs.
And I
Everything.
was in that moment thinking, wow, you didn't even allow me to enjoy that compliment.
Right.
Like you grab the spotlight and move it to you because that's where the spotlight belongs, not to me.
Right. And you would never in a million years do that with your daughters. And I think
No.
but those are the moments when you realize first of all, I'm not her. And I feel like I lived a lot of my life in terror that I was going to become like her. I was terrified the mental illness was going to get me. I was terrified somehow deep down I was just what. And I remember those moments when it's just like, no, I made very different choices. I make plenty of mistakes, but I made a lot of different choices than she did, even back then as a child.
It happens to me sometimes. I look a lot like my dad, but of course she's my mother. So I will sometimes make a facial expression, or I would make a sound or something and immediately remind me of her.
Ugh.
And I used to be very triggered, years of
Mhm.
therapy, by the way,
Yeah.
but I used to be very triggered. Like I would go to the other extreme. I don't want to look like her, sound like her, be like her. I don't want to have a beauty mark like her. I don't want to be her, because that was what I didn't want to be. I didn't know what I want to be or who I wanted to be, but I knew I didn't want that. So I
Right.
would get super triggered. And I'm in a place right now that sometimes I look at myself in the mirror and I see a little resemblance and I just laugh and I go, well, she's your mother.
That's the thing is I think the past is always there, but that's it in a contained, sort of drained of all the energy that it can use to come back and get you. And I think that's the key is when you can look at these things and you don't feel, you may look and see, but you don't feel the grip in your stomach or the dread or fear or whatever the bad feeling is that comes up. I feel like so much of this journey is sort of draining these things that we were too afraid to look at. So they get filled up with all this emotion. And then only by really facing them do you sort of pop the balloon. And eventually, and that's such I'm sure you've had many of these, but these moments when something will happen and you will think, this, once upon a time, this would have derailed me. This would have
Totally.
made me so angry or so afraid. And
I
then you're standing there and you're like, I'm not upset. I'm not upset. I can't believe I'm not upset. And
start
maybe there's
laughing.
yeah, right. But those moments are just lifelines because I think that's proof we can change. And that's the thing is so often we're told by a certain age, this is who you are, this is what you are. You can't change. And I have not found that to be true. I haven't found change to be snap of a fingers, wave a magic wand. It's work and it's hard and it can be ugly and messy and just icky,
Yeah.
but you can do it. I just think this would have sent me into a shame spiral. And maybe there's something to be done, but I'm not just spiraling in these horrible emotions and suddenly 14 again, dealing with something that was so much bigger than me that I
And
don't even
that's
know how. Well, that's so, I will answer your question, but I will start by saying that's such a profound question because I realized early on, I write my books for younger versions of myself.
mm-hmm.
That is who things I've learned. And Buck's Pantry was the first book that came out, and that was about dealt with mental illness, and then this time could be different. And so all of my stories, my target audience is me at different points in my life. And I think when it resonates with other people, then you think, wow, we have so much common experience. But back to your point about the 6-year-old, quite honestly, and sometimes I think about this, what I wish I could do is just sweep her up in my arms and take her out of that situation because I think what was happening was just too big and too profound. If I couldn't do that, I would tell her, trust yourself. There's nothing wrong with you. You're in an awful, unwinnable situation. But if you put one foot in front of the other, eventually you're going to get bigger, you're going to get stronger, you're going to be able to make your own choices. And if you can get through the hard parts, and this is a little end of this is something I incorporated into Buck's Pantry, things will get better. But there's nothing wrong with you. If I could tell myself one thing, I would say there's a lot wrong. It's not you. It's
Right.
where you are, the adults you're with, and the choices that they're making. That's what I'd say. And that's such a profound question. So thank you for asking me that. Well, I think that's so important is to be able to see the profound work that interchange is. And I'm with you. What matters to me is being able to be at peace. Quite honestly, peace has been my aim for a very long time. I don't need wild happiness. I just peace. Because when you grow up like we did, you didn't have peace. There was never peace. There was always looking over your shoulder. Where's the blow coming from? Where's the rug going to be pulled out? Right. But I think what you just articulated and being able to own what a profound journey just changing that inner landscape is huge because I think it is. I mean, you look at it, you're like, I don't know how I survived what I survived or how I ended up where I am. I think many of us feel that way. And
Yeah.
back to your original question, I think that's why we're seeking our purpose, whether it's in our art or speaking or podcast or whatever that is, to say, I had to survive that mess for some reason. So let's talk about it. And whatever I went through, I would love for others to be able to at least inform them so that they can get through it sooner. Like, I think that's a really good point. And I think that's maybe why some of us have come out of some really extreme places
Mm-hmm.
because to be able to say, if I can crawl out of this hole, I promise you, you can crawl out of the one that you're in. Because we didn't have that. I didn't have that example of someone saying, right. But that is what is pulling you forward is just knowing this can't be the way things are
It.
supposed to be. I don't know how they're supposed to be, but I love that.
Yeah.
And I love your unbecoming, because I think everything word that you're using that is so brilliantly encapsulates everything we've been talking about today, because the first piece of the journey to becoming who you choose to be is unbecoming all the stuff that you became because of what happened to you. Yes, the reviews do help all of us,
Yeah.
podcasts, books, everything. Oh, I appreciate that. And I've loved our conversation too. And I'm so impressed as I've read through your books and listened to your podcast with the dialogue you're having. So thank you for what you're putting out into the world, because I think that's very helpful.
Thank you all for listening to the Don't Shrink to Fit podcast. If you like this episode, please write a juicy comment below and subscribe to my podcast. Remember, we can only fly if we embrace each other. Until next week, be happy, be safe, and be kind to yourself.